Think
Good
we are.
evening and welcome. We are here tonight to do a live question and answer period with Masonic artist Ryan J. Flynn. Brother Flynn is the Junior Warden of Ancient York Lodge number 89, Free and Accepted Masons, Grand Lodge of New Hampshire, and he is also the Junior Steward of Anniversary Lodge of Research number 175 here in New Hampshire as well. My name is Paul Smith, and among other things, I am Ryan's unofficial business manager and dear friend. And I am a past master of Phoenix Lodge number 105 in Tilton, New Hampshire. So we're going to start this evening by going right into several questions that were sent to Ryan, as well as some questions that I have written as well. And the first thing what I'd like to do is ask Ryan to introduce himself to us and explain a little bit about why he does what he does. So, Brother Flynn, won't you please?
Thanks, Paul. Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Very excited to be able to do this. A little bit about me. Some of you may know I consider myself a Masonic artist. As Paul said, I'm Junior Warden of Ancient York Lodge in Nashua, New Hampshire. I had gone to school previously for art at UMass Lowell, and had the pleasure of studying abroad in Florence, Italy, where I learned a little bit more about art history and painting. So needless to say, design and art are the great pleasures of my life. I consider them the great passions of my life, I should say, and always seem to be doing something artistic. I was lucky enough to have a really good high school and some really good family and friends who pushed me along to excel at art. A fun story that just happened recently when I went back to my high school for homecoming. My English teacher told my wife that my papers were horrible, but my covers were absolutely fantastic. So I couldn't read the books, but I drew the pictures really well. So yeah, I had become a Mason in 2010. I was raised June 2010, and immediately jumped into the line. I knew it was something that I could get a lot out of, that I was hoping I would get a lot out of, and
Good evening
it's worked.
and welcome. We are here tonight to do
I'm
a
getting a
live question and answer
something
period
going
with
on here.
Masonic artist.
Go away. So yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, it's been something that I've dove into and getting quite a bit out of, and it's pushed me to get back into art in a more aggressive manner. And as an artist, you can't get a better subject than masonry. It's a rabbit hole that you just go down, and you're always going to find inspiration.
Excellent. So what I'd like to actually start with is, do you have a favorite Masonic artist?
The favorite artist is one of those questions that, if you're an artist, makes you kind of cringe a little bit. There's a lot of artists out there, and you really can't pick a favorite among other ones. For Masonic artists, there's a few out there that really grab my attention. The person who comes to mind first and foremost is I believe he's from Germany. His name is Jens Rusch, I believe, or Rush. He does oil paintings that are absolutely incredible. He has a whimsical way of applying the paint that just comes out in a way that just it looks like an animation, but it's got the character and the physique of an oil painting. They're amazing. Also, Brother Warren's, I'm going to butcher your last name, and I apologize. Sarapua Fuva, I have a sore throat if you can't tell. From Florida, he does the winding staircase and the Masonic roundtable. He does these really, really cool abstract geometrical works that I really, really dig. He's actually quite the opposite of my technique, where he has this distinctive fine brush work. Every brush work stroke was very intentional. So he gets these great line works. Myself, I'm messy. I let the paint kind of speak for itself and slap it on the canvas or wood and hope that it looks good. So those two really stick out in my mind as Masonic artists. There are a handful of others out there that are getting much. They're really starting to push themselves, and I can tell. Chad Mesteler, who does the Pillar Beauty website, Facebook page, he's starting to do these great Masonic portraits, which when I look at them, they have this mix of almost pop art with classic portraiture. I love them.
Okay.
Awkward silence. Did we freeze?
We did freeze. Did you hear my question?
I did not.
I said, who is your favorite non-Masonic artist of all time?
That's an interesting question. With me, I've been able to travel, well, to and from Italy, and been to quite many museums in America as well. But he's little known outside of artists and people who studied art history, but there's a sculptor by the name of Bologna, who was a Florentine, and I love looking at his stuff. He did these massive sculptures, and he had this way of organizing them in a way where no matter where you sit around the sculpture, it's perfect, perfectly presented to you. His famous sculpture, The Rape of the Sabine Woman, is these three entangled figures going up, and it's massive. It's probably 25 feet tall, and you can just walk around it all day. I've spent hours in front of it. So he's one of those people that really stuck out with me with just his composition. And then, of course, Bernini, another sculptor, actually, he has this way of making sculpture not look like sculpture. You know it's marble, you see it's marble. If you're lucky enough, you can feel it, and it's marble. But you look at the way the hands caress a body, or squeezing. There's a famous sculpture where a man is grabbing a woman's leg, and you can see the softness of the subject, and it's incredible to see in person. You don't believe it when you see it. So, oddly enough, even though I'm more of a painter nowadays, my two favorites are sculptors.
So, would you say that the Rape of the Sabine Woman is your favorite work of art, or do you have something else that's your favorite work of art?
So my favorite work, actually, I ever saw is a Da Vinci. The Presentation of Mary. It's basically a angel approaching Mary, and she's kind of taken back. It's a good-sized panel, probably like 4 or 5 feet wide. It's in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. But what is crazy about it is Da Vinci was this genius, and when you walk in and you look at it from the angle in which it was originally presented, it looks like Mary is like pushing back and saying, "I don't want this." But because of the way her arms are over-exaggerated and stuff, as you walk by it, you get this illusion of her hands coming closer, and when you walk completely past it, she's turned the other way, and she almost looks pregnant. It's incredible. You can't get it online. It was definitely done on purpose, and it's mesmerizing. My wife was watching me when we went there last year. I just kept walking back and forth in front of the thing. People were looking at me like I had a third head, but definitely my favorite work I've ever seen in person.
Who or what is your biggest artistic influence?
So, as I said, I studied in Florence, so naturally they're going to be Florentine. Well, one of them's Sienese. I always really, really appreciated the early Renaissance. So there's three artists who really started the path towards the Renaissance in the manner of painting, and they did altarpieces and other religious art or icons, but not the traditional like Greek icons. And they were Cimabue, Duccio, and Giotto. And they had this amazing way of creating portraiture without being a portrait artist. Most of the figures in their paintings are almost identical, but they match this great oil painting and fresco with this harsh gold behind it, and these images come out and they're absolutely beautiful, and they're massive too. So if you ever get the chance to see one, like I said, the Uffizi in Florence has most of them, but there's a handful scattered around the globe. There's a couple in Boston, which I'm in Nashua, so it's about an hour from here. A couple in the MFA in Boston that are worth seeing.
What was your motivation in starting a Masonic art career?
Well, it was an interesting story. Luckily, a brother of mine in my lodge, Chris Busby, I think he's watching right now. He told me that they were going to do these stickers basically on the windows in our lodge, and I saw what they were going to do, and I thought, this is horrible. I mean, it was a horrible design. There was nothing Masonic about it. There was no thought put into it, and Chris managed to get my name to the person who was making the decisions, and I said, stop, I'm doing this, I'm an artist. And I went to town, and it was invigorating. I just kept working on these windows on my computer every second of my free time. And I ended up coming up with what I now have, the National Masonic windows. You know, I did a presentation in Lodge, and I found that people were like really into this Masonic art that actually had thought put into it. It wasn't just a square and compass slapped up on a window and everybody said it's Masonic. No, there was like oomph to it, for lack of a better word. So that got me going. And like I said, I jumped right into the officer line. I was senior steward right away, 6 months after I joined. And then through a couple of people dropping out, I found myself to be senior deacon the next year. With learning the ritual for that, it just, you know, started sparking my interest, and I haven't turned back.
Can you talk about your windows at all? Tell us a little bit about what you put into them, and maybe show us them if you happen to have the design up.
Yeah, let me. Excuse me for looking away. I'm going to do a screen share in a second. So this is my first. My first work I did as a Masonic artist were these windows, and I look at them now and I realize that I didn't know a lot back then. I knew the basics. I knew, you know, the stairs mean this, the faith, hope, and charity, you know, sprig of acacia, that sort of stuff. But I didn't really understand it, and you can see because I've made a couple of errors in judgment in my layout here, but I'm still obviously extremely happy with them. But what we have my idea was on the left we had operative masonry, and on the right we had speculative masonry. And I used some sacred geometry, which I had learned in college, you know, basic stuff, phi, the golden ratio, you know, Fibonacci, and I came up with all these shapes and stuff based on it. And then I had taken stained glass in high school, so I knew how to design glass. I just didn't have the capabilities of making this. These are quite large. So I designed it so that they could be made someday, and hopefully that'll happen. It'd be quite expensive to do it, but maybe someday the lodge will raise the money, or someone will donate the money to do it. So I have operative on the left, speculative on the right, the figures of faith, hope, and charity on the stairs that have 3, 5, and 7, and then in Latin I have brotherly love, belief, and truth. And on the left, those orbs that are going around are all the Masonic bodies that meet in the National Masonic Temple. So, you know, you have Scottish York, Eastern Star, and then the two smaller ones of the Rainbow and D-Molay. But I like to put hidden stuff in there as well. So one of the things you can see is that the sprigs of acacia have 32 leaves, and then an extra leaf in the shape of the eye at the top to make 33. You know, the bands of the apron wrap around the columns 8 times. 8 is the in numerology symbolizes you know, eternity, and stuff like that. The circles around the rose part of the window are 24 pieces, you know, emblematic of the 24-inch gauge and stuff. So it's stuff like that that I enjoyed throwing in there, and when people actually heard about it, they really opened up their eyes. They're like, oh wow, he put some thought into it, which oddly enough seemed like it was something that wasn't happening a lot, and kind of took me back a little bit.
Sure. Now, the next big project that you came out with was your Codex series, based on the Fellowcraft degree. And it obviously screams Da Vinci at us. But if you could, tell us how you developed it, and possibly show us the designs and what your philosophy was in making those available.
Yeah, so like I said, I dove right into the senior deacon chair. And in New Hampshire ritual, or New Hampshire Grand Lodge, it is usually asked that the senior deacon present the middle chamber lecture. So I started memorizing it, and I'm starting to memorize all this cool symbolism stuff. And you know, pen and paper made it into my hand. And I started sketching some ideas, and you know, those of you familiar with the lecture, you know, it gets into the columns, the staircase, and then why we should study geometry. I'm sitting there, and I just started sketching this out, and I actually have a codex of my own. It's a little black book that has all my ideas and observations in there, and I just kind of came up with the ideas. Let's do something with this. So all of a sudden, my rate of memorization dropped to not improving, and I started sketching out ideas, and what I came up with was the Codex series. And as you said, I took a lot from Da Vinci. I'm very, very fortunate enough to have seen Da Vinci codexes in person, and there's a lot of stuff that with any work of art that you really don't get until you see it in person. And I tried to bring that into this Codex series. So I have multiple layers of sketching. I have the square and compass that I started with, and then the columns that are, you know, drawn to scale from the dimensions that we're taught. And then I have some notes in there that, you know, like what if I put Polaris in the celestial globe, or, you know, what should be the center point of the terrestrial globe? Should it be right where I am, or should it not? And then you know, it's very commonplace knowledge that Masons used to use Pigpen cipher, among other ciphers. So I used Pigpen cipher, and I wrote in the dimensions, as well as some notes on the symbolism of the capitals, and came up with this. And I have little sketches here and there. So I started with the columns, and then I went to the staircase. As a student of Renaissance art, I kind of took a little poetic license here, artistic license, I should say, and designed something that would have most likely been made a lot later than when the temple of King Solomon's Temple was made. And I incorporated a couple of different works of architecture into it, just to encompass all knowledge. So I have the Roman arch in the back, followed by a Gothic arch, which you really wouldn't see in reality. Then on the side, I have on the left side, I have the philosopher holding his scrolls. On the right, I have the workman, the craftsman, holding tools. So I have you know, speculative on the left and operative on the right. And then this rose window, or rose design, I should say, that's up at the top, is based off one of my favorite symbols, the flower of life, which has its roots in Kabbalah, amongst other things. And I like to incorporate that pattern into a lot of my work just because I find it absolutely beautiful. And once you learn how to do it with a compass, it's something that it's very easy to do if you know how to do it. And then finally, the third one, which is the one that everybody seems to like a lot more, was geometry. And these are some sketches that I did of the orders of architecture, and then we have, point to a line and so on, and then a square and compass with an eye that I drew. And speaking of drawing, a lot of people ask how I did these. So I am a graphic designer by trade, but I like to work with my hands. So to make these look old and to make them color the way I want, what I would do is I would sketch them on paper and sketch each individual section out individually, scan them into my computer, and then organize it in a way that I like it. That way it still keeps the artistic level where I want it to be, but it also allows me to use the tools of graphic design, which I firmly believe if any of the artists of yesteryear had the ability to use, they would be using it too.
I'd like to move on then to something else that obviously you've kind of taken the field by storm, so to speak, and that's the notion of Masonic patents. You've taken Masonic patents to a level I don't think anybody in the craft has ever seen. Certainly, we've seen some old patents that are certainly ornate, but nothing to the level of design and implementation of certain aspects of symbolism that you've incorporated. And so far, you've produced several different kinds. You've produced your first one, which is an illuminated styled document, and which led to your creating of your actual illuminated patent on calfskin, followed by your Regis patent, and then your Celtic patent. And so what I'd really like to do is find out which of these is your favorite, but more importantly, I'd like to find out how you did the research and looked at the history and figured out the work that was necessary in creating these, and frankly, what the real motivation was behind creating those documents.
Well, if you go to school for graphic design, and usually you're required to take art history courses, and one of the courses that you take is the history of graphic design, which arguably can go all the way back to the cave paintings of Spain, if you really want to think about it. But where it really starts off is, in the 600 to 800s with the illuminated documents. And for those who don't know, illuminated documents are documents that were done on vellum or calfskin or parchment, usually animal hide. And what the artists would do is they would ink them by hand and then hammer and glue gold and other precious metals into it. And they call it illuminated because if you see one in person, the light hits it, it's blinding. The most famous one that people know is the Book of Kells, which is now in Dublin at Trinity College. And luckily I've gotten to see it, and it's amazing. You look at it, and it beams importance, and it beams history, and the hours and decades that people put into pages is incredible. So when I was raised to Master Mason, my lodge presented me a certificate, which I obviously have it framed, and it's extremely important to me. But I had this thought of, all right, I've been just told that this is one of the best achievements of my life, and it's extremely important in the rest of your life. This is going to define you. And then I get a photocopy. So, I'm not saying that I wasn't, happy with it. Like I said, it's very, very special to me. But I thought, all right, let's see if I can take this a step further. And frankly, I've always wanted to try doing an illuminated document, just because I've seen so many of them, and I'm horrible at calligraphy, but I figured I'd give it a try anyway. So I did the same method that I did the Codex series. So I started drawing it out and scanning it in and aging it on the computer. And what I ended up doing is creating these medieval-looking documents and printing them on G-clay printing, which is it's printing with pigment, and it lasts forever. The ones that I sell are guaranteed to last 100 years in broad daylight. If you put it behind a frame, it's there. It's not going anywhere. And if you're old enough to complain about it, I don't think I'm going to be around, so it'd be tough. but so I started off with this really basic one, and people really liked it. I had shown it at the MRF symposium in progress, and people were ecstatic about it. So I knew I was onto something. So I came out with the original one, sold a couple of them, and then I said, all right, I got to do some different kinds. So the second one I did was, actually, I apologize. The second version I did was for a past master. And then the third one I did was my favorite one I've done, and that's called the Regis patent. I came up with this idea after our district education officer was talking about it in a lodge. And I looked into it. I read the Regis poem, and I said, all right, I can do something with this. So I came up with this design. I'm going to share it with you here. There we go. So I came up with this design here, and I call it the Regis patent. So the reason I call it the Regis patent is, if you can see around the edge here, I've written a good chunk of the Regis poem around the edge as part of the border. And it's one of those little features that people don't really notice, but I love showing that part to people because it really opens up their eyes. So, taking a cue from the medieval patents where they usually showed pictures of staged events, I did this ornate O featuring a scene from one of our degrees. And then down below, I did the 4 cardinal virtues encompassing the square and compass. And I actually find it, it's a very simple drawing because they really didn't have concepts of light and shape and depth back in the Middle Ages because they were working so small that they didn't have the opportunity to do it. So the style is very cartoonish, and it's very frustrating for someone who's classically trained with painting, such as myself, to do something like this, because I look at it and I think I'm drawing something from Family Guy. So I came up with the 4 cardinal virtues, and the geometric pattern that you see here, I usually, if someone purchases my enhanced version, I put 23 karat gold and fill that up and hammer it into the paper. And I do that the same for the scene up top. And then the border around the edge, I do, it's a blend. It's called Florentine gold, which is, it's gold and copper fused together. And it has this intense red, goldish color that people really like. So that's definitely my favorite one. I did the Celtic one, and my dad's probably going to get mad at me for me not saying that the Celtic one is my favorite. But sorry, Dad. I can't top the Regis one.
That being said, I would direct all of your viewers to go to ryanjflynn.com, which is your website. because if you click on the Masonic artwork link and go down and click on the Master Mason patents, you will see the authentic patent that you created, which is the calfskin, and just the picture alone of the work, you can see the gold that you stamped on there, and just the sheer brilliance of how it comes out. Plus, I would just mention too that you have a wax seal that you've created. That is your actual own Masonic design that you've put on there, and I really would encourage your viewers to check out your website and check out the various options that you have.
Yeah, the seal that I did, I sent it out to a machinist to make it, and it's quite large. I think it's 2 inches in diameter. And I originally made it for my authentic patent. So I do offer the real deal. It's real gold, real silver, on handmade parchment from the best place to buy parchment in the country. It's a place called Permagina. It's in New York. Famously put on dirty jobs with Mike Rowe, but their work, handwork, is incredible. The parchment's so it's so interesting because you don't use it anymore. You don't know what to expect. But nothing but the absolute best from them. I've ordered probably 5 or 6 sheets from them, and every one of them has been flawless and fun to work with. And then that matched with the inks and the wax seal, it really just makes it look incredible. The first one I did for myself, and I thought I could do no better. And then a brother from Florida commissioned me to do one, and I blew that one out of the water. So I'm anxiously waiting to do another one. Unfortunately, they're a little pricey, as you can imagine. The materials for an actual illuminated document are really expensive. I don't really make a lot of money off of those. I just enjoy doing them.
Certainly. That actually leads to a very interesting point. Your work is, some would say that it could be expensive. I don't particularly subscribe to that. Having worked with you for a year now, in setting some of your prices and whatnot, the amount of time and effort that you actually put into each patent, it doesn't seem like all that much. But you and I have talked about pricing of not just your work, but different Masonic art, potentially in a lodge. And I'm wondering if you could talk about your philosophy on that, and share that with the brethren. Specifically, one thing that you mentioned in a previous presentation with respect to purchasing artwork for.
Yeah, art is an interesting, or purchasing art is a very interesting topic. Art is expensive. It's the way it is. It's a good example I like to use is with my graphic design. So I charge a good amount of money per hour for my graphic design. And I've had people come up to me and say, that only took you 15 minutes. Why are you charging me, $75? Well, it took me 12 years of work and learning to be able to do it that fast. And that's a great analogy that someone else had told me. And it kind of goes with art as well, but with artwork, the patron doesn't get to see any of the work. They'll just see a tracing board or the Codex series and say, all right, I just want that. Can I have it for $10? And it doesn't work like that. So if I were to price it out on an hourly rate at $15 an hour, I'd be doubling my prices. It's extensive work. There's a lot of research that goes into it. I'm trying to be known for having multiple levels of meaning in my work, and that takes planning. As for purchasing it, I know it can be a financial burden on people. My patents are around $100 to $150 each. I don't make that much off of them. I try to keep them as low as I can without being a slave. But that being said, I think when you purchase something that is a little more costly, um, it means more to you. Um, I'm not talking exorbitant prices. I'm just saying, you buy a bottle of whiskey and you buy a bottle of single malt scotch. Which one are you going to savor more? Um, it's just that kind of mentality. Um, Now, with lodges and purchasing art, um, I think the idea of that's too expensive for my lodge is a lazy idea. The lodges will spend money on stuff that brings absolutely nothing to the table, Masonic-wise. Um, a lodge will go out and without batting an eye will spend thousands of dollars putting chairs in their dining room. But if you say, give me $1,000 to do a portrait or to do a work of art that's going to adorn the walls for generations, they shudder. And it's a shame. Art is one of those gifts that is very, very different for everybody who views it. If I look at the Mona Lisa, I see one thing. If you look at the Mona Lisa, you see another thing. That's what makes it a great work of art. It's a personal relationship with the viewer. So if a lodge invests money into a work of art, and stopping there for a second, I don't mean my work of art. I mean any work of art. There are millions of artists out there, and they all would love to do work, and they should be doing work. But if a lodge, say, spends $5,000 on a mural or something that goes in their wall, or any work of art in general, you can't think of it as spending $5,000 out of my bank account to buy a pretty picture. You're purchasing something that is going to have a personal impact on every Mason that's in your lodge now and every Mason that's going to be in your lodge when you're gone. Art lasts forever. And I always find it funny when, well, I've seen it a couple of times, I hate to say it, where an anniversary comes up in a lodge and they do a dinner. And, okay, your 150th anniversary just came and you had spaghetti. Congratulations. No one's going to remember this. But if you, dare I say it, think 10 years down in the future and raise your dues $5 and put that extra $5 into a fund to purchase a work of art to commemorate that, then you're really purchasing something that honors that 150 years and honors the next 150 years, God willing. And the idea of I can't afford that, or I shouldn't say the idea that a lodge can't afford that, or a lodge doesn't want to spend the money on that, I find it's lazy to be blunt. With any bit of planning, anything's possible. My lodge could say 40 years is going to be our 200th. I think it's like 50. Will be our 200th. Let's raise it $10 now, and then we're going to have $100,000 to do something. And that's an extremist point of view, but imagine doing a sculpture outside the front of your lodge building commemorating 200 years of community service and being active. That is a huge, huge gift to not only your lodge but the community, and to use the A word, it's an advertisement. And people really got to think about it that way.
Okay, so I'd like to move on a little bit and talk about the tracing board. Now, over the past several years in the United States, the tracing board traditionally has kind of fallen by the wayside. But there's certainly a resurgence in the desire to restore our Masonic heritage, namely through movements like observant lodges, traditional observance, etc. And I see that you've nearly completed a tracing board for the Entered Apprentice degree, and I'd like you to tell us a little bit about that, and specifically what's behind your shoulder.
The Bruins logo? Well, they're the greatest hockey. Yeah, ever since I started doing Masonic art, everybody comes up to me and says, "So when's your tracing boards coming out?" Um, I really got the idea last year where I was visiting a lodge in another state, and someone was touring this building, and he opens up the door, and I see three tracing boards, just prints, attached to some sort of board that they were going to use. And he said that the Grand Lodge had mandated that every lodge buy those tracing boards. And I, as an artist, immediately thought that's horrible. I mean, monotony is not what masonry is about. A tracing board should be, along with any art in a lodge, should be personal and should be one of a kind and should be very special to your lodge. I've had lodges say they want my windows from Nashua in their lodge, and I tell them no. You can use them for other things, but I will not give them to adorn a Masonic room because they're Nashua's windows. And I've turned down money for it. So with the tracing boards, I wanted to do something personal, and I wanted to do things one of a kind. So keeping with my medieval styles, I started using egg temper paints again and really started learning the medium. It's an interesting way of painting. It's both additive and subtractive at the same time, and you can do a lot, and there's no wonder some of the greatest works of art like Botticelli and stuff like that were all egg temper. So this is what I've come up with right now. This is the first stage of it. There's going to be an ornate frame that a brother in my lodge is building with me that's going to have some of the other symbols built into it, and then it'll be on display. So I designed this to take it in a different direction. I've seen the very basic tracing boards. If you haven't gotten McNulty's books, they're basically art books for masonry. They're absolutely fantastic. His first one had a bunch of tracing boards, and they were very plain, and because of the era that they were built in. But I decided to do something more scenic and with a little bit of a personal touch. So I came up with this scene, and I kind of used the symbols in a different kind of way. So 3 burning tapers are now torches on the wall, and the walls that are behind them are illuminated by this glow of the light, and that's where you find most of the symbols of the degree. We have the working tools, the great lights of masonry, the circumpunct, and a tracing board underneath that one. So it's kind of like a different approach to it. I'm not quite done with it. I've gotten all the basics done, and now I get to have fun, put all the hidden stuff that I want to throw into it for people to discover later on. So as you can't really tell in this, but it's quite large. It's 3 feet by 2 feet right now, and then it's going to add another ½ foot on each side when we're done, ½ foot each dimension when we're done. And I plan on having it done for the Grand Lodge of New Hampshire, so I can display it in the lobby. And I will be announcing that when my lodge, Ancient York Lodge in Nashua, has their first EA degree, we will be using it in the degree. And then after that, it's going to be up on my website for sale. I'm doing a high-end copy of it and donating it to my lodge after the fact. I would love to give them the original, but I need to eat. It's a way where I'm going to be able to give to my lodge and also hopefully give something to a lodge that will last a very long time.
And that's one thing I wanted to talk about, Ryan, is the fact that your goal is to try to produce one-of-a-kind tracing boards or icons or whatever for individual lodges. For example, you did the icon for Columbia Lodge in Maryland.
Yep.
I think that what we're trying to tell people about is the fact that you offering all these services, and we will custom tailor things for the individual lodge.
Yeah. the way I look at it is I love doing patents. I love my patents. I am very, very proud of them. But I I'm an artist. I like the brush. I like the brush. I like the canvas. I like painting it on wood. That's what I want to do. So, and frankly, when I dropped that Columbia Circumpunct off and saw the faces of the people in that lodge and how much it touches people, I get comments all the time about how much they love that work, and
Yeah,
and that really hit me. And I want to continue with that because I'm willing to bet everybody in that lodge is going to know what the circumpunct is after the EA degree, and
right, right.
and it's going to be something that's very special to all those Masons, hopefully. So with tracing boards, it's the same way. Now, saying that I want to do commissions all the time is one thing, but I do realize that there are lodges out there that can't buy a hand painted gigantic painting. So I will be offering prints of them, but at the same time, I'm not going to be offering $10 cheap paper prints of it. Anything that I produce has my name on it, has my signature on it, and I will never produce cheap crap, to be blunt. So
Sure.
I will be doing G-clay printing on canvas and getting it to look as close to that as possible, color-wise, texture-wise, and even we'll reproduce the frame if need be, if people want that. But yeah, it's something that I really think if a lodge had that, the EA degree is going to be even that much more special for people.
I agree. I'd like to change hats for just a moment here as we begin to wrap up our conversation this evening.
Yeah, I know we have a
Um,
couple of questions I need to address too here.
sure. One of the things that I'd like you to take 2 minutes and just chat about is you and I have had many discussions over the years about the square and compasses just being stamped on stuff and merchandised like crazy. Could you tell me what your philosophy is on that, please?
I've gotten some heat online for my thoughts on this, and I'm not going to apologize for them. Um,
You shouldn't.
so I do a presentation about Masonic art. I've done it in a few lodges, and it's gone over really well. And one of the things that I stress the most is just because you put a square and compass on something does not make it Masonic. There are thongs out there with square and compasses on them, and I consider that a great insult. You know, I'm not comparing Masonry to Christianity or anything like that, but if you put a crucifix on a thong, what would happen? You would be not in a good spot. Uh, So I'm looking at the square and compass, and people put it on anything they can put it on. T-shirts, underwear, socks. I've seen it stamped on guns. And at what point are we changing the Great Lights and Masonry into a logo? Um, as someone who is both an artist and a graphic designer, I've been on both sides of the argument. I've worked with logos where all right, I'm going to make this company's product, and we're going to slap this on anything and everything we can sell, and we're going to do it. And I've also worked with artwork where I have extreme instructions saying, do not put this image on anything unless I approve it because it means that much to me. And masonry, for me, is extremely important, and I know it is for you, and I know it is for a lot of people. And when I see the square and compass slapped on anything you can sell, it is insulting. Um, Now, don't get me wrong. I have no problem with someone going out and buying a Masonic T-shirt or a sweatshirt or something that has the wine. I saw some fantastic Scotch glasses. They're beautiful. Um, that's one thing. But when you start wearing T-shirts that make Masonry look like a gang, or you make it, I'm awesome because I'm a Mason, what are you really saying? And um, that's, like I said, it's insulting. Um, you don't need to be, if you're joining Masonry to be cool and to say you're a Mason, then you're in it for the wrong reasons. And there's plenty of other organizations you can join and walk around and say how awesome you are because you're one of them. And Masonry shouldn't be that. It's about subduing your passions, acting on the square. It specifically says that. So that being said, I can promise people that you're never going to see merchandise from me. I thought about it when I first joined the craft. The first thing I ever did Masonic was a polo shirt. And it wasn't anything special. And then after I did them, I was like, well, what am I really doing here? I mean, they weren't bad. They weren't crap. They were nice shirts, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. And I know there's a lot of Masonic artisans out there, and I say artisans as opposed to shopkeepers. There's a lot of Masonic shopkeepers out there that do not care about Masonry. They don't. They are all about the dollar. But there are a few out there who are making stuff because it honors the craft, and people should support them. I strongly encourage anybody who's about to buy a Masonic T-shirt or Masonic anything, a bumper sticker, you know, take a second, stop, look, see what this is really presenting to the public. Are you trying to act cool because you're a Mason, or are you cool because you're a Mason? You know, so that's kind of my personal philosophy, and I've gotten some flack for it too. I respect other people's opinions. I know people out there are extremely proud about being a Mason. I am too, and they have different ways of showing it, and that's fine. I just ask that you should patronize companies and people who are doing it for the right reason.
Absolutely. One thing I'd like to touch on real quick, since I see him staring at me over your shoulder, you have a raffle going on at the moment featuring our learned brother Pythagoras. Could you talk about that, please?
Yeah. So this guy up here, it looks really small because it's far away because I have this weird camera. Excuse me. Yeah, so while I was getting ready for my my tracing board, I really wanted to start learning how to do egg temper in the classical traditional way. And I came up with this icon. So what it is it's egg tempera on wood, and then I bought a very old, damaged frame, repaired the frame, and then gilded the whole thing with gold. To be done just like the artists that I said before, like Ducho and Shimabue. This is how they did it. Luckily for me, I don't need to mix lacquer with all the carcinogens and stuff like that, and it comes in a handy-dandy spray can. But the paint is relatively the same. The lacquer is almost the same, and I was really happy in how it came out. So what I decided to do is, well, before I say that, a lot of people know I have big plans. I have a couple of big projects coming out in the future that require overhead. Like I said, I don't make a lot of money off of these yet. I think the tracing boards are going to help me out a little bit, but right now I don't make a lot off of my art, and it's hard to fund big projects, especially when I'm going to need people to help me with it. I'm going to have to hire woodworkers for this upcoming project. And I'm not one to ask for handouts. A lot of people said, well, go on, you know, you fund me or whatever, and people just throw money at you. And that's not the type of person I am. I don't like asking for money. So I came up with this. I have this great piece. It's sized so it could go in any lodge. And I thought, well, let's raffle it off, and to be Masonic about it, I'm going to take half of the money that I raise and donate it to my lodge. We have some big plans coming up education-wise. I don't want to get into too much detail yet because nothing's planned for sure, but we're going to be leading New Hampshire in the state, leading the Grand Lodge of New Hampshire in education in the upcoming years, and it requires funds. So I thought this is a great way where I could raise money for my next project and donate some serious funds to my lodge. So if you go on my website, ryanjflynn.com, the first image that will show up will click to the raffle. They're $7 ticket. The money goes to me, but I'm donating it. And I would really, really appreciate anybody who helped out, because it would both help out my lodge and go specifically for materials and costs of my next work, which is going to blow this out of the water.
And right now, you have set a goal of trying to raise $3,000. The drawing is on December 6, 2014, which means there are 39 days left. So far, we've raised $491, or 16% of that goal. And again, half you raise will be going to your lodge, with the other half going to help out future Masonic projects that I think will benefit the entire craft.
Yeah, the cost of my next project is going to be near $1,000 just to do. That's not counting any of my time or any money going to me at all. Egg tempera is a great paint to use, but it's very expensive, and I don't use cheap versions of egg tempera. And there's going to be significant woodworking involved in the next one. And that person needs to get paid, because I can't hammer a nail. So also with that money, $1,500 to my lodge will pay for the next event and some. So I'd love to see those guys get it. I have an absolutely fantastic lodge. We're a great group of guys. We are education driven, and the support I get from these guys is incredible. They're always asking what they can do for help. They want me to talk about art all the time, and I reluctantly do. I'm always talking about art in the lodge, and I could not have found a better lodge to be in. So I really want to get back to them as much as I can.
Sure. Now, one question that Brother Chad Mesteler posted that I want to ask you, because I think it's a very good question. Legacy do you hope to leave for future generations with your art?
That's a deep question. I have to bug Chad about that after. Legacy is a big word. I think with any artist, the idea of creating something that's going to last longer than you is pretty deep. I have this weird goal in my mind that years after I'm gone, hopefully a great-grandson of mine or some relative of mine goes into a Masonic lodge and sees something that I did and people respect it. That's kind of my legacy that I kind of want personally. My biggest goal is really not about me. Art needs to come back to Freemasonry. It was once very important, and it's not anymore, and it's a damn shame. Back in the day, and you can blame the economy, I blame laziness. The Masons supported the arts all over the place. Almost every major public building had Masons involved with it. Lodges were built not to be buildings with Masons that Masons met in, but they were Masonic buildings. They were designed around Masonry. In one of my presentations, I say, the Statue of Liberty was designed by a Mason, and he hired Masons to build it. So you have millions and millions of people coming into America for the first time, and the first thing they see is Masonic artwork. That needs to come back. And if I can do any small part in motivating other Masonic artists to do that, I can. And I'll tell you how to do it, and it's very easy. It doesn't involve a cent. You have to discuss art in the lodge. If you don't discuss art, if you don't promote art, if you don't go to art museums, no artist is going to want to join Freemason. You're just going to wait like me until an artist happens to join. But if you really go out of your way to promote and understand and learn about the arts, you're going to attract artists. And once an artist gets his hands on Masonic ritual, you can't not have inspiration. So my biggest legacy, I hope, will be that I talk someone who's a lot better at art than I am into painting and having him run with it and creating a wave of other artists to come. So that's hopefully what I get out of it. And make a buck or two.
All right, the hour is now 9:30.
I know we have a couple of questions.
We do have a couple more questions. We can try to answer a couple of them quickly.
Yep.
But I think it might actually be a good idea if we try to do this again sometime, because I think that I actually had about 10 more questions written down, but since you're a long talker, we didn't get to those. So why don't you try to address just a couple of quick questions, and then we'll try to wrap up here.
All right. Andre from Fellowship Lodge in Bridgewater, where do you see Masonic art going now that tattoos are in the picture? If you ever want to have a fun conversation, go on like the big public Masonic Facebook pages and see the arguments that come. People thinking putting a square and compass on a tattoo means you're violating your oath and obligation. We should throw it out. It's fun. Poke the bear. So Masonic tattoos are it actually ties into what I said about tracing boards. I would just say that I have nothing against tattoos. I want one, but I'm an artist and I'm picky and I just can't settle on anything. Make sure you do something that's special to you. Masonry is obviously special to you, but take the time and don't do something off the wall and come up with something that's really meaningful to you. I hope it's an art form, and I want to see Masonry in everything. So hopefully I can see some really cool Masonic tattoos coming out, and I hope people share them, and I hope people really appreciate them for their artistic merit, because it's an amazing craft. Sean, how are you, bud? Curious to know what sort of prep ritual you may have before you start continue any art. Is fine craft beer as you stare at your workplace music. Now I have my own studio that I'm sitting in now, so I kind of get to go into my own space, which is great. I do something that's a little different than a lot of Masonic artists, and I actually got the idea from Da Vinci's notebooks. Da Vinci always said that you start with black and add from that, because everything in the world is light added to darkness. I use that in my presentation as kind of a metaphor, but every time I do a painting, I start by painting the entire thing black. And when you start adding to it, the colors start coming out, and you get this very Baroque look where light source is the actual subject of the painting and not the actual physical subject. So that's kind of my thing. I sketch out my ideas in a codex that is always on me. It's always on me. It's either in my car or it's on my person. And just kind of sketch out without erasing ideas. And when I finally get something I'm ready to go with, I just go. And I get lost in time. So one thing I do, which I'm starting with my tracing boards, is an old Italian Renaissance tradition is an artist is never happy with his work, and he finally just has to say, I'm done. So what they used to do is break the brush when they're like, all right, I'm done, snap, and you're done. And I'm going to start doing that, because then you can't work on it anymore. So it's a little traditional thing that I'm going to do, and maybe I'll tape it to the back of them, just to keep with them so people have something when I sell them, but that's going to be something I do. And then I have a nice 16-year-old single malt that will be the celebratory drink when I finish. That's
excellent.
I think that's it, unless someone added one somewhere else.
I think that'll do it. At this point, what I'd like to do is encourage all your viewers to make sure that they go to your website, and that's ryanjflynn.com. Definitely check out the website. There are lots of various nuances on the website. Ryan has an artist statement that he posted. There are testimonials listed. There's a way to contact him with his email address. I believe on there as well. and it is. And that's his cell phone number. So make sure you call him at 12:30 at night. Also, make sure you log on to Facebook and become a fan of his page. It's facebook.com/Ryan J. Flynn Artist. At this point, I would like to thank Ryan for asking me to moderate this GoToMeeting. Excuse me, Google Hangout. I got to get my lingo correct here. It has been a distinct honor and pleasure for me. I first met Ryan in 2011, and shortly after he did his windows, he actually did the logo for Phoenix Lodge, which is the first new lodge in New Hampshire in 42 years. Additionally, the first what we call traditional observance lodge in the region. We're very proud of the work that he did for us. It encapsulates our lodge and our mission entirely. And really, over the past year and a half, Brother Flynn and I have worked very closely together since he was at the MRF and designed our poster, as well as our programs, and sold his codices, which really attracted a lot of interest. And one thing that I do want to share, just so people understand, and 2013, and Right Worshipful Tom Jackson, former Grand Secretary of the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania, and Executive Secretary of the World Conference of Masonic Grand Lodges, was our keynote speaker. And he actually purchased one of Ryan's posters to bring home and put on his wall. And this is a man who has probably the biggest Love Me wall of any Mason that I could probably think of. And the fact that he actually purchased something by Ryan to put on his wall, I think, is pretty amazing. So, Brother Ryan, congratulations on the work you've been doing. We traveled to Cincinnati for this year's MRF Symposium, where you sold your wares and did a great job there. I know you're going to be traveling to Philadelphia next year for that symposium. Additionally, we're looking to try to get you set up at Grand Lodges across the country, and the only place you have to go is up, my friend. And it is a pleasure watching this journey. So, on behalf of all your fans watching and everybody else across the Freemason world, thank you, and I'll let Ryan have the last word to say goodnight.
Well, thank you all for joining me. I really enjoyed doing this, and I hope we can do it again sometime. I have other artworks that we can discuss, and if we just want to discuss art and Freemasonry, I would love that. So, in closing, I got to thank Paul here. Paul is the man behind my patents. He helps me with the wording, and when I say he helps me with the wording, he gives me the wording. He's masterful with how he words things, and it really is the finishing touch on my artwork. So a public thank you to you, brother.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention that I do travel to other lodges and speak. I'd be happy to go to your lodge if it's in the area. If it's not, we can talk and we can figure out how to do it. Art and Freemasonry is my passion in life, and I want to share it. And hopefully I can get more opportunities to do that. So I get to hit the stop broadcast button now. Thank you all for joining me tonight, and I really, really, truly appreciate the support that I get from all of you guys. It's pretty amazing how many people like my stuff and how many people tell me they like my work, and that never gets old. It really doesn't. So hopefully I get to do more stuff and make all this stuff look like the bad stuff I did at the beginning. So thank you again, and hope to see you soon. Bye.